Prime Day turned into a 5-day event. Prime Big Deals Day turned into a 5-day event in Australia as well. And then Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale was a full 2 weeks. That was unheard of. Obviously, that creates opportunities and challenges for our clients as well.
Welcome back to the Commerce Collective podcast brought to you by Flywheel. I am your host, Emma Irwin, brand marketing manager here at Flywheel, and today we are talking about the land down under. That's right, we're going to cover commerce in Australia. We're going to talk about the dynamics of this region, the dominant players and stages of retail media innovation, and the nuanced behavioral or more tactical commerce challenges such as extended deal events and overall measurement across networks that brands may face. Without further ado, let's meet our guest.
My name is Mo. I'm the managing director of the Australian Flywheel business. And my role is to continue to build the team, grow the business here in Australia, and continue to deliver good results for our clients.
I'm kind of curious, how did you get this gig? Where did you come from? What have you been up to before this?
Sure. So I've been part of the Omnicom family for the last 11 years. And prior to the Flywheel gig, as you put it, I was helping our clients as part of Transact, which essentially was a center of excellence in Omnicom across digital commerce. And in the usual way, we were helping our clients across retail media, their organic presence across local retailers, and Amazon services to an extent. But after the rollout and announcements around Flywheel locally in Australia, obviously our services and capabilities have expanded massively.
Got it. Okay. Last question before we get into the actual meat of this episode is something we ask everyone, but I must know, what is the last thing that you purchased online?
Okay. So it was earlier in this year. I was looking, as you can see behind me, my background is very plain. So I was looking to get something for the wall, and I came across these beautiful frames called Grid Studio. That's the brand who built them. And it's essentially old iPhone or Android phones. Their internal parts are all framed up, handmade, really beautiful. But the challenge is it takes a while for them to be built and framed and especially sent to Australia. We're a little bit away from Europe.
Yeah, that makes sense. I am excited to see them eventually. All right, as you heard from the intro, we've got a lot to cover in this episode. But we have to start with the macro factors impacting the Australian economy as just somewhere to kick off from, and that can then send us on the journey of understanding the Australian shopper and how those behaviors impact broader commerce. Let's kick it back to Mo.
So, since the pandemic, and especially over the last 2 years, the overall retail sales in Australia has been really anemic. So we're talking 2 to 4% growth every year, which isn't huge and definitely lower than average comparably. But the e-com growth has continued on its average of around 10% year-on-year growth, which has been good for Australia. Obviously, it all accelerated during COVID, but it's come back down to the average 10% year-on-year growth. And what that's done over the last few years is helped the e-com penetration to go up to around 14% overall. So compared to the US or some of the European countries like the UK, e-com penetration is still not that high. And some of those macro economy impacts, things around inflation, cost of living, have hit the population a little bit hard, especially over the last 2 years. We've had like 13 interest rate rises in a short period of time. And what that's done from a consumer behavior perspective is we're clearly seeing a shift to more price-conscious customers. The same has been reflected in the average order value for customers. So what that's led to is essentially an average order value that used to easily average around $110, $115 is way down to upper $90 range. And part of that is because we've had sale events in the market that are becoming longer and longer, more and more events, especially in second half of the year. But at the same time, sort of overall, the per capita expenditure has gone down as well, right? As I mentioned, reflected in the average order value. Talking a little bit about the sale events, you'd find it interesting as someone who lives in the US that Black Friday and some Cyber Monday as a sale event wasn't really prominent up until 3 years ago. But over the last 2 years or so, we've seen retailers trying to sort of capitalize on this from a global perspective, and Amazon has played a key role, but also we've seen local players really jumping up on this. And just last year, we saw the percentage of online sales during the 4 days of Black Friday, Cyber Monday go up to 35% of total transactions. So not only Black Friday, Cyber Monday has become a overall sale event, important event in Australia, but it's become a key online sale event as well, where, as I said, comparing 35% to 14% is a massive jump compared to the average. Another thing that I can say about the Aussie shoppers is that it seems like they're more considered, and when they want to buy something, they research it quite well, and they're quite sort of like eco and sustainability aware, right? Let's put it that way. What that leads to is much lower return rates compared to some other markets. So the average return rates in Australia is around 10% compared to, say, 20% in other markets in the US. That's obviously really beneficial for the retailers from a cost perspective, but also, as I said, from a waste production and all of that, it's really a positive sign. From a retailer's perspective and consumer behavior, another thing that's interesting is Aussies love their loyalty programs. So essentially 9 out of 10 people is at least part of one loyalty program. Similar to other markets, the actual loyalty program market was established by the airlines, but over the last 4 or 5 years, again, around the time of pandemic, we saw the top 2 grocery players in Australia, which we'll talk about a little bit later, really hone down on their programs, getting the value exchange right. And now we're getting sort of around 70% scan rates on the loyalty programs in grocery stores. And what that allows them to understand is a really clear understanding of shopping behaviors for their consumers, their category behaviors across the board. And also, as I said, from a value exchange perspective and the macro environment that we talked about, share personalized offers to them, right, at the right time. So overall, it's been a win-win. I think they've managed the balance of it quite well.
Next up, we're going to dive into the dominant and new entrant retail media players in Australia that have really driven innovation in this growing space.
You know, for the size of the market and the economy that we have, retail media has just exploded here. So I'll try to go through some of the key players, try to categorize them in the best way possible. So similar to other markets, grocery was the first vertical and category to see retail media established from a local retailer's perspective. And in the grocery space, we have Woolworths, who's the largest grocer, and then Coles, who's the second largest. They've called the retail media networks different names. So Woolworths is called Cartology, Coles is called Coles 360. Hopefully that'll stick around. I remember that through the conversation, but they've taken 2 different approaches in building their business and the team structure that they've set up internally. So internal facing for the retailers. So Cartology, which was Woolworths, have really leaned into managed service. So they want to build capability, manage capability in-house. So they've built a media business essentially to receive briefs, implement briefs, and deliver those. And the main reason for that has been sort of privacy concerns and keeping the customer as close to their infrastructure, their customers as close to their infrastructure as possible. So it's got benefits, but it can sometimes hamper growth. When we look at Coles 360, though, they've taken a more partnership plus managed service approach. So they've been open, sort of working with agencies more, external partners to help them grow more. And that's been the core difference between the two and how they've grown over time. Having said all of that about Cartology, we've seen them open up to agencies more recently. So this year they've established an agency team. There are self-serve offerings that are coming online outside of just a sponsored search and display on-site inventories, which is quite exciting. So that's our grocery space. Then in the alcohol space, we actually have a vibrant retail media category, let's say. And that's because of the differences that we have around advertising laws in Australia around alcoholic beverages compared to the US, for example. Like Amazon in Australia does sell alcoholic beverages. Yeah. No subscribe and save though, as far as I know.
Bummer.
So in the alcohol space, we've got, again, you'll see this repeating again. We've got two sort of large players. Both of them own multiple brands, retailer brands. So we've got Dan Murphy's and BWS, who are owned by Endeavor Group, and the retail media network is called Mixin. From a Mixin perspective, what they've done and what I really like about their growth trajectory over the last few years has been they really sort of established working with agencies early on and partnering with agencies so that they can both service the larger customers and pick up some of the long tail customers. And that's helped them grow quickly in this space. So that was grocery, alcohol, and obviously, I've mentioned this, we've got the international players in Australia as well. Amazon is well established now over the last 7 years. So they launched in Australia in 2017. And then Uber, from a quick commerce perspective, has really grown their footprint really well here. And then we've had quite a number of new entrants over the last 12 months. So although those verticals were well established, as I said, we've had a really growing landscape here. So there's a lot happening in this space in Australia, and it creates fragmentation, but also new things coming to market, different approaches to retail media businesses, which make it exciting for us.
For sure. Do you think there will be a push from brands in Australia for more of that like unification and consolidation of networks over time?
I'm sure there will be over time, but I don't think we're at that phase yet. There's definitely a huge push from advertisers around unified measurement, and IAB in Australia is doing a lot of good work in this space, and we're helping our clients around that area. But I think given the fact that we've had so many launches just last year or in the last 6 months, we're still in that growth phase, and that means more fragmentation in the short term. But there will be a point where, the dollars aren't infinite from an advertiser's perspective. So each retail media network really needs to have the right proposition to establish themselves and get that share of advertising dollars, really.
Gotcha. And my next question for you is, out of the conversation of fragmentation, we hear a lot of times we start talking about like clean rooms in general for trying to do a little bit of like more closed-looped measurement in terms of each and every network. Is the usage of clean rooms a common thing for brands to be, or probably more likely some agencies using in terms of measurement?
Okay, so we've got to define common.
Fair.
I wouldn't say it's as widely used as it should be, but that's one of the things that we're doing, helping our clients essentially democratize use of AMC. As you know, in Flywheel Commerce Cloud, our native integrations really make AMC accessible. What I've observed is that specifically on AMC, over the last 18 months, there's been a move from AMC being used by sophisticated advertisers more to drive insights to now more and more even smaller brands sort of utilizing AMC, and those more sophisticated advertisers moving on from not just generating insights but making it actionable. So building custom audiences, pushing them through, and doing more of the sort of objective-based marketing that you can do using AMC audiences and moving beyond the off-the-shelf audiences. So that's been really exciting. And there's the announcements that Amazon's made recently at CES, for example, where the retail data points look back window can extend to 5 years. I know it's a US only beta right now, but we're working really hard and hoping that we can get access to that in Australia too, because for clients in certain categories where consumer journey is longer, that's quite exciting for them on what analysis that can surface for them. And then I think Amazon has been investing in democratizing AMC themselves as well. So there was the announcement in Unboxed, as you've covered in your podcast earlier, around AMC audiences for sponsored search, right? Through agencies. So again, that's another way that AMC is now being connected to more and more touch points across the advertising ecosystem on Amazon. And as an advertiser, that's quite exciting, and it makes it easier to access for them.
Okay, we're next going to discuss some of the unique elements of Australian commerce and what nuances exist for brands to work around. Mo mentioned the importance of deal events earlier, such as Black Friday, Cyber Monday really taking off down there, or even Click Frenzy, which had been one of Australia's biggest sale events running in February and November until Black Friday, Cyber Monday came around. We'll dig deeper into sale events in a few minutes and how brands should approach them, so don't go away. But I asked Mo for any other behavioral or tactical differences to be considered before we get there.
So I think building on that Click Frenzy sale event, like buy now, pay later as a payment method in Australia is really well established. So we're looking at around 15 to 20% of all payments, whereas I think in the US, it's less than 5% of all payments are paid buy now, pay later. So that's one difference. The other one where we might be different to the US, but not necessarily to Europe, is again, that prevalence of click and collect, right? So essentially you have the convenience of shopping online, but collecting it from the store. And, around 70% of Australians or Australian online shoppers use this. I don't think the uptake in the US is as high. And that could be due to Walmart. You've got all the local sort of presence, so it's not too far away, and it's a thing that people do, just enjoy that shopping. The other one might be social commerce. So you've had TikTok Shop sort of explode in the US, and then Amazon has had their live shopping for a while in the US as well, whereas neither of those exist in Australia. So social commerce or video commerce in that sense hasn't really picked up in Australia to the same level that it has in the US, and definitely not to the level that it has in Far East and in China, right? So that's another one. Yeah, I kind of touched on sustainability, right? And ethically sourced products. That's really important to Aussie shoppers. So more than half Australians said that they're more likely to buy a fashion item if it's marked as sustainably made. So that creates an interesting dynamic for, say, Shein or Temu, where it's all about fast fashion. So it's going to be interesting because there's that push and pull between value. As I said, the cost of living pressures and all of that exist, but also the sentiment around the positive sentiment around sustainability exists at the same time. So we'll see how that push and pull goes over time. But these are some of the hopefully more interesting nuances of the Australian market.
My last question for you in terms of actual e-commerce related content is, you up at the beginning of the episode mentioned extended deal events, especially through Amazon in Australia. And so I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more than that on that, but also why is Amazon doing that in your opinion? Why are they experimenting with the longer events in Australia?
Sure. So I think it all started 3 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago. Again, as the interest rate and macro economy was getting a little bit tougher. And what we saw was retailers in general trying to extend or start their sale events, all those sale events like the mid-year sale or Click Frenzy, just a little bit earlier than their competitors, right? Just a little bit, so that they get a higher share of wallet. And that was getting worse or better, depending on your point of view, every year. Obviously, Amazon had invested quite a lot in establishing the Prime Day sale as a key retail event in the Australian calendar as well. Then what happened in 23? They introduced the Prime Day 2 or Prime Big Deals Day in Australia as well. And then suddenly last year we saw a huge change compared to other markets. So Prime Day, the main Prime Day, turned into a 5-day event in July. Prime Big Day Deals, a Big Deals Day, turned into a 5-day event in October. And then Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale was a full 2 weeks. That was unheard of, right? And I think one of the reasons why is obviously higher share of wallet, making sure that, because from an advertising messaging that Amazon was using, it was all about, for example, both for Big Deals Day and Black Friday, it was all about Christmas, getting everything delivered, stocking up for Christmas. But at the end of the day, I think it's sort of getting more of those gifting budgets earlier on. And as I said, Aussie shoppers are more price conscious, so they're used to building baskets, wish lists ahead of these well-announced sort of events. Then obviously that creates opportunities and challenges for our clients as well, because suddenly a deal that you were always planning for 2 or 3 days is now 5 days to 2 weeks. So we were helping our clients, working with them quite closely to focus on a number of things to avoid those challenges. Obviously, stock levels and forecasting was really key to make sure that we can sustain a presence over time. We expected the competition to be higher, and we saw that actually in the CPCs. So there was around 10% increase in the cost per click, especially on the Black Friday, Cyber Monday 2-week period, which over 2 weeks period, you got to account for that in your budgeting as well. So we try to help our clients manage that through intraday bidding and sustaining their presence at the right times of the day where we knew sales are happening during the event. But cost or supply challenges weren't the only thing. Overall, we saw a massive increase in overall sales for our clients as well, which was the positive impact. So depending on the category, we saw between 20 to even 45% increase in sales year on year, which is really meaningful. But again, one of the things that we helped our clients with was what is the right selection for them to go live with deals to maintain profitability, so that profitability over that longer period and higher sales volume doesn't get a materialized hit, right? Which is, at the end of the day, what's important to our clients. So yeah, quite interesting. I'll be keen to see how the same events go on this year.
For sure. Okay, my actual last question for you, this is just a fun one, but I'm going to ask for something that's on a digital wish list of yours, which means that it's living in a cart somewhere and you haven't actually purchased it, and why?
I think I actually need to check my wish list, because it's literally a wish list. I put stuff in there and forget about it.
Perfect. We love it.
Let me see what we've got here. All right, I shouldn't have forgotten about this. So one of the things that we wanted to get was robot vacuum. So believe it or not, our household doesn't own one yet, but we definitely need it with my 4-year-old son. There are more and more stuff on the ground. So yeah, I've researched one. It's in the shopping list. So we'll see if I can wait until a sale event or I actually buy it full price.
And that wraps up another episode of the Commerce Collective podcast. I bet you didn't wake up thinking you were going to learn so much about Australia today, but now you have, and you've brought in your global perspective. And for our friends listening in Australia, I hope you've also unlocked some insights from Mo, especially around retail media strategies across networks and those extended deal events. Thank you to Mo and the Flywheel Australia team. I've been your host, Emma Irwin, and we will see you next time.